Bobby Telford is going to put the, hopefully for the Hawkeyes, he's hoping to win and extend the lead. They're ahead 19-9. Here's Collin Jensen. He's a freshman going up against a very seasoned Bobby Telford for the Hawkeyes.
Season's a good word, Tim, you know, as far as Bobby Telford. The guy's just really tough to score on, and, you know, hasn't looked as crisp as he's had, you know, earlier in his career, but, you know, great hand fighter here in this heavyweight weight class, and what sets him apart is his ability in the top position. It really takes a lot to be able to get out from underneath, but I think what the coaching staff at Iowa is looking for is the Telford to go ahead and do what he's doing right now, really work the head hard and try to see if it opens up any offense here on the feet and see if he can go ahead and get a fall. So there's that snatch single leg attempt where you stay on the feet and reach and see if you can pick something up.
Collin Jensen, redshirt freshman out of Mobridge, South Dakota. There's a couple of famous former NCAA titleists for Nebraska from Mobridge.
World medalist, the Shear brothers. So the
Jim and Bill Shear not only has meant a lot to the Nebraska program, NCAA titles, but to the USA program as Olympic medalists, leaders in the sport, and a big part of Olympic wrestling staying Olympic wrestling.
Well, the Shear boys stepped up, you know, when the sport was in need at the international level, and certainly with Jim Shear's connections internationally, and was part of that effort to go ahead and bring wrestling back into the Olympics, and we're all the better for it.
So Nebraska, leaders in the sport of wrestling. We talked about this year's, but we spent time with Jordan Burroughs, Olympic champion, two-time world champion. He sat in with us at 165. That was a treat, Jim.
And like I said before, I mean, I get around a lot of old-timers, and we just love the way that man competes and how he represents all of us in the sport. Just admire the way he goes about his competitive fire, and wish him only but the best of success. And he's got 3 world championships underneath his belt, and it looks like he's got the ability to really put a great string together. Of course, Telford has an opportunity to be able to score. See how he elevates that ankle right there? I like that technique. Now he can drive that shoulder into the hip.
And out on his toes with his knees off the mat.
Yeah, and he cut short on the amount of time that he was able to get that. He was just clearly establishing an advantage. And you know, this Collin Jensen, he was only about 215 pounds a year ago, and he's jumped up a few pounds, and looks like he's been spending some time on the weights with his legs. Really good, solid guy. Looks like he's only beginning to kind of grow into the weight class as you look at him athletically, and I think, you know, that's the type of build that you can really, I would say, build on as far as being able to go ahead and be competitive in this weight class.
Like Adam Kuhn, true freshman, ranked #1. We just saw the rankings there. Talk about someone that's executing this year, having a good season, a great season, but a lot to build on that physique of Adam Kuhn's. The same thing here with Collin Jensen.
Well, the heavyweight weight class, like 74, but particularly the heavyweight weight class, is all the big-time heavyweights just appear to be in this conference. I mean, even when you go, you know, you look at Telford, you look at McMullen from Northwestern, of course, the national champion. Now you got Kuhn and you got Chalfont, and you got McClure at Michigan State. And who'd I miss? You know, so it's you know, you got guys that can, you know, almost the top 8 are right here. Then you got Jimmy Lawson, who's a tough out from Penn State. So
Chalfont just had a good win over Jimmy Lawson, Indiana's Chalfont, as you mentioned him. Highly ranked and doing a great job for the Hoosiers. There's a slide by Telford. Into the first period. These Hawkeyes we'll see next week. Big match, big meet with Minnesota when the Gophers come to Carver Hawkeye.
Gophers no strangers to having some success at Carver Hawkeye, but we saw, you know, particularly with the Oklahoma State meet, you know, the Hawks really, I mean, they're rounding into really good dual meet shape.
That'll be 1 p.m. Central Time on BTN next Saturday.
Gophers with 8 returning All-Americans.
Jay Robinson, 26 years as the head coach, 27 years as the head coach at Minnesota, doing a fantastic job. We talked about his coaching staff and the job he's done over the years.
Work the center, gentlemen.
Next week on BTN, 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern, from Carver Hawkeye Arena, Minnesota at Iowa.
And Telford with the quick escape, only spends 6 seconds in the down position. And his season was cut short last year with I think it was an injury to his back, and he wasn't able to go ahead and compete the way he was capable of, and didn't end up becoming an All-American. But
yeah, he defaulted out of the NCAA tournament.
And I think that the Iowa coaching staff was real cautious with him at the beginning of the year, bringing him in at the right time.
He's 15-1 this year, including a 6-1 mark against ranked opponents. And he has some wins over some of those guys that you mentioned, Lawson. Then there's Felix from Boise State, McClure, and Chalfin. He's got a win over Chalfin. His lone loss came in the Midlands finals to number 4 or number 1 now, Adam Kuhn from Michigan, who is now ranked number 1. He was 4 at the time. But Telford is 6-0 in duels. And now he's one of only 2 undefeated. Corey Clark, who's not even in the lineup right now. It looks like Thomas Gilman is the 125-pounder of choice. Corey Clark is undefeated, but Derek St. John was, but he's not anymore in duels.
That's just amazing. 23 guys have held the number 1 ranking so far this season, and now it'll be 24. You know, for second week of going into the 3rd week of January, that's really kind of unheard of, and particularly when you had 7 defending national champions coming back. So you've had 5 number 1 ranked guys just in the 33-pound weight class. So that little crack stat was brought to me my guy Mark Mangiani, who watches all the BTN broadcasts closely, and I thank him for it.
You know, speaking of our icons and the people that have meant so much to the sport, we want to give a shout out to the legendary Dan Gable and talk about his namesake Gable Museum overcoming adversity after a recent flood due to water pipe breaking. And so we want to get behind Kyle Klingman, who does a great job, executive director of the Dan Gable Museum. And the museum, if they're anything like their namesake, they're going to overcome a second major flooding incident.
Well, I gave him my wall bracket here. I hope it got out of the water.
No, nothing was. Yeah, it did. It
I talk to Kyle here.
Yeah, and I gave him a couple pictures too. So, but Kyle said, "No,
look at this nice bar arm set up there." Boy.
And Jensen's done a nice job holding his own so far.
You're exactly right, Tim. And he's battled particularly on his feet, because that looked like he was about ready to go over. And as all freshmen do, they struggle in the bottom position. But Telford has is pretty good, particularly when he gets you flattened out on your stomach.
Minute left in the 3rd period.
1 minute left in the match.
My wife wouldn't let me put that wall bracket on the wall anyway, so no loss.
The wives have ancient history. Unimpressed, right?
Yeah, right. So
I am impressed. I mean, Jim, you're one of the few that won NCAA titles as a wrestler, won an NCAA title as a coach. You're one of my heroes in the sport, and so if Annie doesn't let you put it up at the home there, know there's some people out there that admire your accomplishments. And
it's just like a guy that comes home from the Ducks Unlimited with another sprint. They just never make the wall.
Well, Bobby Telford's going to add a point onto this win, but you know what? Collin Jensen, a redshirt freshman, doing a good job of holding his own against a real one of the best heavyweights in the nation from Iowa. Telford gets a workmanlike win. He wins 2-0. The Hawkeyes win 22-9, and your winner at heavyweight, Bobby Telford,